This one's not a comedy.
No, and I resent that they use the term momfluencer.
It's like we have to stop with that.
And we have to stop with the family vlogging. I'm going on the record.
Okay.
I'll get into it later. I think it's weird and irresponsible and it creeps me out. So
Okay,
it's all bad, everyone. Welcome to TCO. Ba-na-na-na-na.
Hi, Jillian Benzavalli.
Hi, Patrick Hines.
Can I make a quick announce?
Of course.
So, fam, just yesterday, I dropped the trailer for a brand new podcast I'm making. It's called the Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast. It's happening, girl.
It's happening, girl.
It's happening. I'm making this podcast with my dear friend, Broadway royalty, Jennifer Samard. You might know she's coming to Broadway in
Death Becomes Her with Megan Hilty. Hello.
Which we just went to see in Chicago, and she's so good.
Did you love it?
Oh, my God. It really, everyone's talking about it. It's so good. She's so great.
Well, she's an icon and a living legend, so there you go.
Same as you.
Oh, please.
I only work with icons and living legends.
I don't know about that.
It. But the whole thing about this podcast, I've been wanting to make it for years. It's a recap episode by episode of the Golden Girls, but with a twist because we have a full-time researcher.
Right.
His name is Jess. So in our recaps of each episode, we squeeze all the trivia and tidbits about it. We talk about what's going on in the world when it comes out. And then at the end of every episode, we do a deep dive into something from the Golden Girls universe.
Oh, great. The lore.
The lore. So whether in episode 1, we talk about the guy who plays the gay chef who disappears. He's only in that one episode, and he goes on and has a promising acting career, and then he dies kind of mysteriously.
Yeah.
So that's the deep dive in episode 1. And then other deep dives include how each of the women got cast in the roles. And there's so much stuff from the Golden Girls universe. It's, a recap show that's really fun and funny, but also you'll leave there the biggest Golden Girls trivia expert you can imagine.
It's informative.
Yeah.
Educational.
I would love it if you'd go find it and subscribe. It's the Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast. Just follow wherever you listen. And then next Monday, episodes 1 and 2 drop wherever you listen.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Yay. What are we talking about today?
Ruby Franke, she's an asshole. I'm not going to say the full thing. But this is on Hulu. This is very, very, very highly requested. I think people really just want to rage with us about this.
Yeah.
So we have your back on that, dear listener.
Gathered ropes, handcuffs, there were rolls of duct tape, the things that were clearly evidence of abuse.
You have now heard about this since the arrest of a 2 million subscriber plus YouTube mom vlogger.
You guys, in 1 year, we've gained 600,000 subscribers.
Ruby Franke has been charged with 6 felony counts of child abuse.
If you cut one more thing in my house, I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm going to cut its head off.
Ruby Franke built a persona of, strict parenting.
Strict or sadistic?
It sounds like a horror movie.
This is a witch hunt. The devil's been after me for years.
Police department, make yourself known.
I gotta tell you, this is one of the hardest things I've ever watched.
It's pretty bad. There's no getting around it. She and her co-conspirator or whatever are just, they're evil people.
It's very well done. There are parts that I take issue with just in terms of showing photographs of the abuse that happened to these kids.
A little too much of that.
It's a little too much, but this is very respectfully made. It's comprehensive. I didn't know anything about the story going in.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I know everything now. So we're in Ivins, Utah. It's August 2023. It's a hot summer morning. This is one of those that has a ton of body cam footage.
And now because documentaries are being made almost in real time, everyone has a Ring camera now.
Yes.
So a lot of that. Also, Juju Chang is our host and reporter. She's leading us through this story.
Yeah. So it's that morning. It's that hot August morning in Ivins, Utah. We're seeing a Ring camera and it picks up a young boy not wearing any shoes approaching a house. He rings the doorbell. Nobody answers.
Yeah. He's very, very skinny. We're going to call him R.
Yes. Minutes later, he goes to another house. And at first it seems like no one is home, but then an older man comes out to sort of see what this scrawny little kid wants.
Yeah. And so R says, I was wondering, again, because it's a Ring camera, we can see and hear everything. R says, I was wondering if you could do 2 favors. One, take me to the nearest police station. Actually, I just need that. That's the only favor I need. And the homeowner is like, hi, what? Why don't you sit down and tell me what's going on?
And the next thing you know, we're hearing this man's 911 call.
Oh my God.
Now, this man, he's an older, grumpy man, but he is a wreck. He's saying, I've just had a 12-year-old boy show up at my front door asking for help. He says,
he has duct taped around each ankle. I think there's a good chance he's been, This kid has obviously he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
He's obviously been detained. He's covered in wounds.
Right. Now, this is where we learn his mom's name is Ruby Franke.
Yeah, this little boy.
And so it takes minutes for the cops to arrive. And we meet Maddie, who is fire and rescue EMS, and Simon, who's a patrol officer.
Now, every one of the cops and first responders that are here, every one of them is sobbing, telling us the story.
They've never seen anything like it. And the cops in the moment, the cops and the EMTs are crying, but they don't want R to see.
Yes.
So they're like stepping away from the scene. They're putting sunglasses on.
Because also his demeanor, he's very calm. He's not crying. He's not panicking. He's very calm.
Yeah. And we're also, it's so odd to watch because where we are is like stunningly beautiful.
Yes.
We're in the desert and the mountains and it's like a beautiful sunny day. And like the setting is so gorgeous, but this is such an evil, horrible thing. And it looks like, it's like 11 in the morning, like the day is just starting, but everyone's crying. And you can like feel the air is heavy and there's like a darkness over the whole scene.
And this is where we're seeing so much of the body cam footage because they're in the ambulance with this little boy and like he can't lift his legs. It's excruciatingly painful for him to move really at all.
Yeah.
It's impossible to watch. It's awful.
Yeah. But R is being very honest and he's saying that his mom, Ruby Franke, gave him the injuries along with a woman named Jody. We will dive into her. But all we know is Ruby Franke, the mom, and this Jody person.
Yeah.
And they're tying him to weights and they're using ropes and handcuffs. And I'm like, why?
I know.
Why are you doing this? It's for the sake of being mean and cruel. I'll never understand it.
Even putting it into sentences to try to understand why these people do these things is almost like there's no words for it.
Right. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to understand it because thank God most people can't.
Yes.
So it's like we will never get there.
No. And he's saying
his mom and Jody R said that they bound his arms and his feet to weights on the ground, restricting his movement.
He had been handcuffed and chained to weights, like literal weights in the home that he's living in. He had somehow been able to unlock the handcuffs and slip out of the sliding glass door.
Because he was so skinny.
And thirsty and hungry.
That's how he was able to slip out because he's emaciated.
Oh my God.
And so he left through the side door and he was like hungry and thirsty, saw an opportunity to leave and he took it.
He's telling the officers there's other kids back at the house.
Right. So he has siblings and he thinks that they're still back at the house that he just escaped from. Now, the house is Jody Hildebrandt.
Yeah.
Ruby Franke, the mother, is nowhere to be found, but Jody has this house and the cops are like, we got to get there now.
So we see the body cam. They're pounding on this woman, Jody's door, and she finally opens the door.
Jody? I need you to step out.
I have my attorney.
That's great. Step out of the house.
When she answered, she had a phone in her hand.
Whoa.
We're just going to see.
She's on her phone with her lawyer, and they're like, that's great, step out of the house. They have had it.
They've had it. They pull her out of the house. She's screaming.
Yeah, but again, she's already on the phone. Again, call your lawyer immediately. I completely understand, but she knew they were coming because much like the Turpins, a little related, there's a kid missing. This isn't good.
Also, much like the Turpins, the cops do not need a search warrant to go into the house because the kids are in imminent danger. So they don't need a warrant. They just barge right in.
They call it a life-saving effort.
Yes.
Now, I've never seen a house like this before.
Me either.
It doesn't look like anyone actually lives there.
It's very modern. It looks like a compound. We learn it's over 10,000 square feet.
It reminds me of Ferris Bueller talking about Cameron's house, where he's like, the place is like a museum. It's very beautiful and it's very cold and you're not allowed to touch anything. Only this isn't beautiful.
No.
Every room is enormous.
Yeah.
And there's one chair in each room. It doesn't look lived in at all. I kind of can't wrap my head around it because there are one or two things in each room. And when I say each room is enormous, it's so big, but it looks like they either just bought it and they're about to move in or they just moved out.
Yeah. It's very sparse.
There's nothing in there. Do you live there, Jody? What's going on? And endless rooms, endless hallways. There's a weight room, but there are no clothes in the closets. All the drawers are empty. I can't figure out. But it's so big that it's not a halfway spot for them.
And
it's massive.
They don't tell us why it's like this. They don't tell us if Jody just moved into it or what? Or like, did Jody just like not have any stuff?
Right. And like, I know they're depriving the children, obviously, but I guess maybe because we just did the Turpins and they were hoarders and they had like a refrigerator full of food. But this house, like, they don't even have clothes for the adults.
But they don't have couches. Like, they don't have a rug.
There's like a chair in a room.
Yes.
And that's it.
I think we did it. I think we explained it.
It's very, but I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So they're walking and they're like searching for our sibling. And in one of the walk-in closets, they find a little girl.
Yes.
And she's sitting in the dark. Nothing's in this closet. And we're going to call her E.
They thought it was a boy because E has a shaved head.
Yeah. And she's sitting there on the floor. She's not moving. She's not speaking. She's terrified.
For over 2 hours, Tobler has been sitting with E, that's how we'll refer to her, trying to make her more comfortable with his presence. Yet E remains motionless and afraid.
But this little girl will not talk to the cops.
So R and E, the siblings, have lived in this house, but they haven't seen each other in a month. So they live in the same home, but they're being separated.
Yes.
And now the cops sit down and try to talk to her. And she doesn't mention her mom, Ruby Franke, but she is terrified of Jody.
Yes.
Anything she says is like, where's Jody? Does Jody know about this? Is this allowed?
Am I going to get in trouble? Yeah.
So the cop is sitting there with her for 2 hours to try to build her trust.
Yeah.
And just reiterate, like, you're not in trouble. But like, this is like.
It also takes them a little too long to order her a goddamn pizza.
I know.
Like, the girl is starving. They bring her some food. She eats it so fast. They order her a large pizza, which she then eats half of.
Yeah, and a full milkshake.
And
so she has like a pizza and a half.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, she's been starved. So now the cops are looking for a third child.
Yes.
And they don't find them. But what they find is, they call it a safe room, but it's like a huge white cement room. And I'm like, this is a big ass safe.
It's a cell.
It's like.
It's a cell.
And now also, like, they open it without a problem, which
Right.
kind of made me laugh because it's like, clearly these people went through a lot of time and effort, and the cops are just like, boop. They just like pops open. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take a small win right now because it's been a hard 10 minutes. But inside this like safe room, it's like a studio apartment. There's like a bathroom and a kitchen, and then the rope and the handcuffs. And you're like, what the fuck is going on in this house?
Yeah. So after 4 hours, E, the little girl that they found, she finally agrees to leave the closet. I love that they didn't just like pick her up and force her out.
No,
they were letting her out on her own terms.
Like, in the most cynical way, we need to get information out of her.
Yes.
So she needs to like us.
Right.
So pizza and just like letting her call the shots, that's what's going to work here.
Yeah. And they, Jody, the woman who owns a house, she's placed in a private room. And then suddenly the mom, Ruby Franke, arrives at the house.
She just like comes home.
She's here.
And everyone is shocked but apparently what happened is that she got wind of what was happening. I'm sure Jody's lawyer calls her.
Hundreds of miles away, we learn.
She drives to the police department first and she's like, I'm told my kids are here. The cops are like, what? No, they're not. Then she takes off to the compound.
Yeah.
She's immediately detained.
She's sitting in there for hours.
Yes.
While the search is being done.
Correct. She came down here looking for her 2 children, but never really digs into that. Like, tell me where my kids are at. Are they okay? It's just none of that. It's just quiet and silence.
She's not asking about her children.
So, like,
she's emotionless.
She's here because she heard that her kids were being detained by the police or had been sort of rescued by whatever. But like when she learns that like they're not at the police station, she doesn't ask a single other question about where they are.
And she's not asking the EMTs and the cops and anyone
How
who's
are
in
they?
this ugly, ugly house.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Where are they? She's just sitting there silent, which partly is like, don't say anything without a lawyer, but there's nothing there. She is dead inside.
Right.
Like, there's nothing to her.
Like, and just to be clear, like, we just saw her daughter has been like living in a closet, hasn't eaten in weeks.
Right.
Her son is wrapped in duct tape, his bruises all over his body.
Right.
Like, you can see his shoulder blades through his skin.
Yeah.
She's asking nothing about her kids.
Nothing. So they charged Ruby and Jody with felony child abuse. They're handcuffed and taken in. Bada bing, bada boom. They searched the house for 6 hours. Now, while they're searching the house, the cops are trying to question her. And this is where Maddie's like, it was like she was in a trance.
Yeah.
Like she would like blink really hard.
And we see the body cam footage of this, and it is as though she's trying to convey a message to Maddie the cop through Morse code or something.
And this isn't, I'm not saying a word, I want my lawyer.
Yeah.
This is like someone who's not well and not on this plane.
Yes.
Like she's just not there.
I absolutely agree. But then she does then ask for a lawyer.
And conversation over, that's fine. Now, I'm sitting here, I'm like, who the hell is this person?
Right.
Who is she?
Ruby Franke, I know.
She's a mom blogger, which means that she like monetizes her kids and family.
Yeah.
And Like, for the record, I don't like the family vlogger vibe. I get creeped out when people use their kids for like views and likes.
Yes.
And it's also dangerous, which we talked about with Quiet on Set, like Ren's mom on TikTok.
Yes.
We just live in a world where we can't really do that anymore. And I think it's weird to use your kids for clicks and money. Like, I think I don't like it.
It's interesting. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it can be done the right way. Like, I mean, I do think it can be interesting to document your life or whatever. But like, my issue with Ruby Franke is that we learn right from so her vlog is called 8 Passengers. It's her husband Kevin, and their 6 kids. But like, what she's monetizing is her approach to discipline.
Well,
that's her big thing.
So she starts it in 2015, and it's all about her amazing Mormon family. We know not all Mormons. We're not saying
of course.
She is weaponizing the beliefs of Mormonism. So it's all about being a good Mormon mom, a good Mormon wife, 6 kids, her husband Kevin. Shari and Chad are the 2 oldest children, now adults.
And they're gone. They're out of the house.
They're out of the house, thank God. 2 teenage girls, and then the youngest who we met, E and R.
But while Ruby's 2 youngest children are at the hospital, getting the medical attention they so badly need, the question now is, where are Ruby's 2 other minor children? And could they be in danger?
We don't know where the 2 teenagers in the middle are.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is the major issue, because that was the other kids that the cops were looking for in that gigantic house that they didn't find.
Yes, and we'll get back to that in a second. But this is where they start talking about how she's really big on discipline. And I mean, it was giving Christine vibes from the Curious Case of Natalia Grace. Where
God.
Because her 2-year-old is leaving her stuffed animals around. She's holding up the stuffed animal, threatening to literally take the scissors and cut the head off the stuffed animal.
And the kid is crying.
Because like the stuffed animals are real to little kids. Like that's like a real, like, I mean,
not just little kids.
I know.
I don't think anyone's too old for an emotional support stuffed animal. Okay.
But I mean, it's very cruel. It is cruel. It's awful.
And it's also, she's playing to camera. Like, you're still going to have the consequence of not having your nails done for a month.
Yes.
All of these like buzzwords. Like, people talk about like therapy speak now. Like, that's a big thing. It's like, it's parental discipline speak, like consequence.
But we'll get more into it later. Like, fine, not getting your nails done for a month is fine.
Okay,
but when you start talking about not having the, quote, privilege of having dinner,
right,
that's not a privilege.
No.
Her approach to discipline is very cruel, but it also seems to be like what people like about her, which is confusing to me.
Because we learned that there are a lot of Mormon momfluencers, that they call them. It's just like, we learn.
Mommy vlogging or momfluencers can be big business.
It's a way for them to potentially support their family's income, which is typically not that possible when you have a lot of kids and you're encouraged to stay home.
It allowed church members to project into the world this image that the church had been teaching for many decades, but now you could do it on social media.
It's a great way to make money because they kind of get you in, and then it's like, well, and then we have family home evening, and then we talk about.
But I also feel like in that community, maybe like those women also, like if the women in that community, again, I'm saying not all Mormons, but in this subset, if they're all meant to be like the homemakers, maybe they are all sort of feeling seen by each other,
right? And if the point is to have the 6 kids,
yes,
because that is a pretty big part of Mormonism is to make your family as big as possible.
Yeah.
Then I can see feeling like, well, I know I have 6 kids, but I'm freaking lonely.
Yes.
And like, I feel less alone watching these videos because she was having millions and millions of views on each video. She was super successful.
But then we learn that she sort of gives that all up in 2022 and joins forces with a woman named Jodi Hildebrand. Now, she's the woman we're going to find out owns that big, ugly house.
That's literally what I have. I said she was the one who answered the door in that big ugly house.
But Jodi is a therapist who was also
Ruby's marriage counselor.
Right. And so together they become the faces of Jodi's online life coaching business called Connections.
Right, but she spells it with an X, and I'm like, why do we do this?
I know. Probably to get the domain or whatever.
Whatever.
I know.
But so like, just to be clear, Ruby Franke starts this very successful blog in 2015, and then by 2022 ditches it all to team up with Jodi to do this Connections with an X thing.
Now we're back to talking about the 2 youngest kids, E and R. They're both now in the hospital. We see images of their legs and their back. Like,
it's horrible.
They were literally starving. And like, I need someone to make it make sense.
And there was like saran wrap, and then the saran wrap was duct taped to their legs, and they had injuries. It's truly, truly horrifying.
I don't understand. I really don't understand.
I don't understand. And what they are really hitting home now is like, okay, we have 2 of these young children being treated for the abuse, but there are 2 young children not accounted for.
So the 2 teenage daughters, we don't know where they are.
Now, Ruby's house is 3.5 hours away. Remember, the house they went to was Jody's house.
Yes.
Now, her house is 3.5 hours away. I'm like, wait, but the two kids were there clearly for a long time.
At least a month that we know of. But yeah, Ruby's house is in Springville. So the local cops in Springville get a warrant for Ruby's house. And they break down the fucking door with a battering ram. And I got to tell you, that was very cathartic to watch.
Also, where's her husband? We'll get to him in
Kevin.
a minute. But I'm like, okay,
I know.
I care more about the kids that are missing, but like, where's the husband?
Well, we're going to find out because like Ruby had a plan for him.
Right.
That's why he's not around.
Well, Jody had a plan.
Yeah,
so
totally.
No one's in the house.
No one's in the house. They're checking everywhere. They're checking closets, freezers, large bags in the garage. They say anywhere an emaciated young kid could hide.
I mean, and this house is much smaller than the big compound. It actually looks lived in. There's like things in the closets, things in the drawer, things in the pantry. It's just it's a stark contrast to the big compound that we just left.
Right. And now the cops get a tip from Sherry, who is Ruby's oldest daughter.
She's 20 years old and she calls and she's like, hey, I hear like you're finally fucking doing something about this.
Right.
Cool. I've been calling for years.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Sherry, Ruby's oldest daughter, who is away at college, tips police that one sister is at a local rec center.
Employees at the rec center had said that this young woman had left with an adult woman who they didn't know.
So it turns out that the two girls were picked up, quote, by someone the rec center didn't know. And I'm like, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to go with a fucking stranger?
That's what I'm saying.
Are you serious?
I know.
Now, like, this person is fine.
Yeah.
But to have, like, and I quote, by someone the rec center didn't know.
Yeah.
So the cops are like, these two children are missing. They're most certainly been abused because their siblings have been abused. Do you know where they are? And the person at the rec center is like, I don't know if they went with someone. I have no idea.
Yeah, you should ask the stranger that picked them up.
And I have no record of their name or anything like that, so I can't help you. Exits that way, fellas. Thanks.
Do you want to take any kids with you on the way out?
Left with someone the rec center didn't know.
I know.
This person's name is Pam.
Yes.
She's a business associate of Ruby's and Jody's, whatever the fuck that means.
And like, you can't tell me that this connections thing isn't a cult. Like, basically, Pam works for the cult.
For
you know
sure.
what I mean?
So they go to Pam's house. The two teenagers are there, and they're fine.
Yeah.
There's no signs of physical injury, I should say. They're not fine, but no signs of physical injuries.
And we don't get much information on this, but like, Jody and Ruby are doing torture to the two babies.
Yes.
But somehow the two teenage girls don't have signs of that.
Yeah, and it's probably psychological and emotional.
Yes.
And, but Pam's like, these kids come here all the time. And the cops are like, cool, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The kids are being placed with family services based on the injuries of the other little kids
Of course.
and knowing that like something is not okay. And I don't trust you, Pam.
No. Oh, and
Pam
also,
is your name? Is your name Pam? I don't know. The rec center didn't know. How should I know?
that goddamn rec center. We should call there and find out their policy on
they left with a person that the rec center didn't know. Like, that is unbelievable. That's egregious. Like, and every parent in the 10-mile radius should be mad and never send their kids there. That's so dangerous. I can't believe it.
Of all the things in this to get worked up about, I'm glad we're stopping on this. This is true. This is a real problem.
I'm worked up about all of it, but
know.
it's like, I know that Ruby Frankie's the villain. Like, the rec center, like, the kids are supposed to feel safe there. The parents are supposed, like, I just don't understand.
They're just going for tennis and swimming. Do you know what I mean?
And where's the fucking father?
Well, let's find out. So this guy, his name is Kevin, waltzes into the local police station.
Did you say waltzes?
I said waltzes.
Oh, I didn't hear the T.
He waltzes
in. Like, what's in that cup there, girl?
But he waltzes into the police station looking for his kids.
Yeah, and now, of course, he's considered a suspect.
As he should be.
He's on years' worth of videos with his stupid wife.
But, like, we're seeing Kevin, the dad's interrogation. He's now saying, I haven't seen my children in a year. I don't know anything.
He hasn't seen any of his 6 children in over a year.
I'm more of a stranger to these kids than that lady who picked up my kids from the rec center.
I mean, honestly.
You know what I mean?
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
So July 2022, Kevin moves out of the house. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
Ruby and Kevin were in therapy with Jody, and then they separated.
So Jody's the one who owns that big ugly house.
Right. She's a marriage counselor.
Connections.
And so Kevin's like, this is 100% my fault.
The reasons are because of my own addictions that I was working through and seeking help on with pornography. Jody saw the need for me to get help, and frankly, I agreed.
I was addicted to porn. Jody saw that I needed help. I agreed. Jody said, leave, run away, stay far away. You don't reach out, only respond when Ruby contacts you.
And
I'm
never talk to your children. And Kevin just says okay to all of it.
And I'm like, are these two women hooking up? This is the first time I'm like, oh,
what
so
kind
they're
of
gay.
Connections we got going on over there?
Like, they were roommates? Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Happy Pride.
Totally.
They're totally hooking up. That was the first time where I was like, gay shit.
Well, we do.
It's a little gay.
We do see them on jet skis at one point.
Like, it's a little gay. And this is...
We're allowed to say that because we're members of the community,
Sure,
I guess?
yeah.
Okay, great.
The gay is just starting.
Yeah.
They're gay. Or they're not 100% straight.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that. No
Okay.
way are they 100% straight.
Okay,
not
great.
I bet my life that they are not 100% straight.
I was
these
not
two.
expecting us to go here. Okay, great.
I'm going here.
Okay, great.
And I'm taking you with me.
Okay, look, I'll follow you
Great.
anywhere.
So the cops are like, okay, Kev, here's the deal. You have at least 2 physically abused children. All of your children have been abused because your wife is a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Here they lay out the injuries. They say that they're starving. Kevin claims he doesn't know what the word emaciated means.
I know.
I don't know about that. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. This sounds like a horror movie. And I'm like, it sure does, Kev.
I will say, like Kevin, I really do think he's hearing this information for the first time, and he is shell-shocked.
He is?
No, you don't
really?
think so?
I mean, we know that the daughter Sherry's been screaming about this for years. I mean, I don't understand.
No, I guess that's true. But I think the mom was always abusive. I think Jody took it to the next level. I think that's why the younger kids who were living at Jody's house are the ones with the bruises and are emaciated and being chained to shit.
That's true.
I think Ruby was an extreme punisher and was doing it all on the internet. And I think that's maybe what the older kids were like. The shit that she was doing before was bad. It was, like abusive.
I see.
Now it's illegal,
Okay.
Is my guess.
Okay. So Kevin, however, is totally standing by his wife. Okay.
I love my wife. I don't want anything to incriminate her or me in ways that I don't understand.
I love her. I want to be with her. I stand by her.
Cool.
Like, can you, that's where you lose me, Kev.
I'm gone.
Yeah, I'm gone.
So the next day, again, Ruby is detained, right?
Yes.
So she calls Kevin where?
From Purgatory.
Purgatory Correctional Facility. And I'm like, Toto, we are definitely in Utah now.
I know.
The correctional facility is called Purgatory.
I know.
We get it. Where do I press the I get it button?
How
Utah?
do we open a gay bar in Utah called Purgatory?
Oh my God.
Wouldn't that
Just
be great?
call it Hell.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. There used to be a gay bar in New York called Hell.
I remember, but we should open one in Utah called Hell.
Okay.
I was just in Salt Lake, by the way. Shout out to the Salt Lake City TCO meetup group.
There's
Hi, Sam.
a great queer community, gay and queer community in Salt Lake City.
We had a great time there.
Yeah.
Say hi to Suze.
Hey, Suze.
Okay, thank you.
Purgatory Correctional Facility. Just really hitting them over the head with it.
I know.
We get it, Utah.
They do say it like 40 times in this episode.
I know. It's like, she's in purgatory. But isn't she? Get it?
I'm going to petition to call the gay bar Purgatory Correctional Facility. Wouldn't that be great?
No.
No?
No, we're not making light of correction. Purgatory, sure.
Okay, whoa.
But we're not going to be like...
You're just going to assume these women's sexual orientations and I can't name a gay bar?
I'm not assuming. I think there's good hard proof.
Okay.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I will never tell you
that.
Like,
there's no, we'll get into it.
Okay, great.
So Ruby, this asshole, calls her stupid husband.
And she has a bizarre question.
Are we in the news?
It sounds like at least you're in the news.
This is a witch hunt. The devil's been after me for years. And I'm a good woman. I don't do naughty things. I'm a really good girl.
Are we viral? Am I on the news? Did I do it?
You're really good at this. I told you on the Zoom happy hour that we did with Patreon the other night that in therapy I called you the Picasso of podcasting.
And I said, don't lie in therapy.
You're really good at it.
To tell the truth
You're
in therapy.
so funny, especially when you get on a fury roll.
I just hate her.
I know.
And we just did Gwyneth.
I know. Who?
Gwyneth.
It's Gwyneth.
That's what I said. Whatever. What are you, a gooper?
Sorry.
Anyway.
Oh,
so
God.
she's like, are we in the news? Do we go viral?
I know.
This is a witch hunt. The devil's been after me for years.
I know.
I'm a good woman. I don't do naughty things. I'm a really good girl. And I'm like, what are you having phone sex now?
The thing
Oh, wait, no, because you are not sexually attracted to your husband.
No. But the thing is, this is where we see Ruby's real actual sickness. She doesn't understand that what she is doing is wrong and abusive.
She cares about the clicks and the numbers.
But I also think there's a mental disconnect. She is so, I don't know, I don't want to say religious. I don't want to offend the religious among us. She is so fundamental that she believes that the torture of her children is making them better. She believes it.
Yeah. So she's been charged with 6 counts of child abuse. And yes, Ruby, you did go viral.
Yeah.
Just
you did
in the bad way.
Well, you went viral because you had been kind of social media famous. Like, of course you were going to go viral.
Yeah. And then we just get more of like Ruby's brand, which is such a stupid word to use, but like strict parenting. So she's like publicizing and monetizing some, at best, questionable things. But really, it's abusive. Like, wanting to cut the heads off the kids' stuffed animals.
Telling her children they're going to lose the privilege to eat dinner.
Like,
that makes me crazy.
Like,
but that's where the
about?
starvation comes from. Like, that was the beginning of it.
And what are they doing that's so bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, the punishment is awful. It shouldn't even be on the table. But, like, what could these kids possibly be doing?
I know.
That they need to be abused and punished in this way? The answer is nothing.
But that's where one of our talking heads says, Ruby built a brand on strict parenting. She so believed in what she was doing and that it was right that she's publicizing what she's doing as though it is right. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think, just in the little bit that I was reading about this, like, people didn't like her. I wonder how many of those million followers were people following her because they thought she was crazy.
I mean, probably a good amount.
You know what I
sure.
mean? Because the children are, like, in danger. But I guess it's not illegal to send your kid to bed without dinner, but, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know?
We'll get into a little bit more of that because people definitely did want to put a stop to it.
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, Shari, however, the 20-year-old, has been waiting for this day for a very long time because she posts on Instagram, finally.
So she has a picture of her mother being taken out of the house in handcuffs with a caption, finally.
And she also tells the world that she tried to tell the police and CPS about this for years and nobody did anything.
Yeah.
And ABC News got their hands on a call that Shari made in 2022.
Hi, my name is Sherry Franke. My 4 younger siblings are living in Springville, and my neighbors have been telling me that they have been left home alone for about 4 or 5 days, and so I was curious if someone could go check on them. I know CPS has come a couple times because of this already, but they never find a problem, but it keeps happening.
She's asking for a welfare check. Her father has already been thrown out of the house because her mom wants to be a little gay. Fine. And she says, like, she's out of the house at this point, but the neighbors are calling her and telling her things. The kids, her 4 siblings would be left at home for like 5 days at a time.
I know.
Because Ruby lived 3.5 hours away from Jody.
But this is what I don't get. We meet Officer Lance Haight, and he's saying we went to that house a bunch of times and like to do welfare checks. Nobody would ever answer. He says we tried to get a warrant, but the warrant was denied. So I guess my question is, like, what do you do?
Because Shari says on the call, I keep calling. You keep telling me nothing is found. I'm telling you there's abuse happening because I lived it.
Yes.
What more do you need?
I know. And I don't understand why the warrant would be denied. Like, get the officers inside that house.
Just ask a couple questions.
Yeah.
Like, why? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Can we cut a fucking corner?
I know.
Like, why is it?
I
don't
know.
understand why when, like, you're wrongfully imprisoned for 30 years, everything's got to be by the fucking book.
Yeah.
But you can't, can someone look the other way?
I know.
When kids are being abused for 2 seconds?
I agree. Like, get inside. You know, like, right. Get inside the house, Officer
Kevin. It takes
Kevin.
30 years to be like, well, that piece of paper said the wrong date. I know you didn't do it, but 40 years to get people out of prison. But like Ruby Franke is abusing her children for the world to see.
Like, literally.
And it's like, unfortunately, our hands are tied.
On
Like,
Instagram.
so is their fucking kids' hands are literally tied.
To weights
you
in the living room.
assholes.
I know.
Figure it out.
I know.
Find a way to do it. You have one of her own kids saying, it happened to me, it's happening to them, and you're telling me you can't open the fucking door?
We get more calls from Purgatory, literally, where she's literally saying to people,
adults have a really hard time understanding that children can be full of evil and what that takes to fight it.
Then Kevin is heard on the call giving an update on their youngest children.
They're going to be in the hospital for 3 days.
So weird. It's just not necessary. They're trying to exaggerate this.
I'm sorry, so your kids are evil now?
Right.
Because that wasn't literally what you were selling on your videos. You were one big happy family, but you were a strict mother.
Right.
But everything was fucking great because you were laughing and giggling.
And then Kevin tells her on one of these calls that the 2 youngest kids are going to be in the hospital for 3 days. Ruby cannot believe, she literally can't believe it. She's like, it's so weird. It's just not necessary. They're trying to exaggerate this.
And she sounds bored, though. The way she says it, she's like, so weird. Like, why are they exaggerating?
The kids were so emaciated they couldn't walk.
They slipped out of the handcuffs because they were so skinny.
They had open sores on their arms and legs.
And we'll get into more of the proof that she was abusive. But there were a lot of red flags in her videos, such as she is sitting there laughing as her teenage son explains that his bedroom was taken away for 7 months.
He was sleeping on a beanbag chair.
She's like, hee.
I know.
Okay, a little girl, one of her little daughters forgot to bring her lunch to school, and Ruby Franke is sitting there in her car. Like, I watched the full video of this, the longer version of it, and she's like, the teacher is probably going to be mad at me, but like, she just has to go hungry now. Like, she has to learn that she's responsible for her lunch, and like, because the school was going to feed her. And Ruby Franke said, no, don't. I'm telling you as her mother, don't give her lunch because she has to learn. Now, I'm hoping the school said fuck off and gave her lunch.
I can't make it make sense.
You're the school and you get a phone call that says, don't you dare feed my daughter. You say, okay, hang up the phone and pick up the phone again and try to make something happen.
Well, of course.
Because of all this, the cops are sitting there like, sorry, daughter who's been abused, can't help you. Shari, the 20-year-old, is calling. The school has evidence. This is on from these videos have millions of likes. And people are starting to notice. So like her viewers or people online are starting to call for something to be done.
Viewers elevate their concerns. And in May of 2020, a change.org petition with about 18,000 signatures circulates, urging Child Protective Services to investigate the Frankes.
18,000 people signed it.
And they're gathering clips and videos and timestamps. You know how these internet sleuths can really get shit done. Like these people were organized because they were seeing it happen in real time.
Yeah. And they're saying the Frankes are now getting death threats. Like a hooded figure walked up to their door and left a note with a threatening message. And so like immediately, this is kind of why Ruby stops posting videos.
And she slowly stops.
Yeah.
And then eventually she stops completely. And now she's with Jodi Hildebrandt. So let's dive into her.
Yes. So Jodi,
a licensed therapist who works with Mormon couples and people from 12-step programs, allegedly.
Right. And so, we learned that, like, apparently Jodi had this great reputation. She ran her own practice in Salt Lake City, and many of her referrals come from the Mormon church. So we meet Stephanie Jones, quote, a former patient of Jodi's. I know you love a good former in a lower third.
She's like, yeah, everything was great till it wasn't.
Right.
Everything starts off great. She sucks you in.
Right.
And then the longer Stephanie and her husband went to Jodi, the worse it got, because you had to fall in line and you had to do what she believed and she said or else.
And you couldn't tell Jodi anything that Jodi didn't want to hear.
And the group sessions were the worst.
Right, because like apparently that Jodi made you keep notes of like the things that she told you to do, whether you were doing them or not. And if, quote, your numbers weren't good, it would be like a public shaming session.
You had to like keep tally and keep score with your spouse or with yourself. I'm like, this is not therapy. This is ridiculous.
No, and then we meet all these men. Like we meet this guy named Trey. He's another former patient of Jodi's. And he's saying that like she just hated men. Like she would just emasculate the men in group settings.
And she was convincing the men that they had a porn addiction.
In Mormonism, if you've ever looked at pornography in your life, you have a porn problem. Like ever, even if it was for 10 seconds. And Jodi figured out how to exploit that.
With Jodi, you look at it one time and you're an addict. Oh, your husband looked at porn? Have him sleep on the couch downstairs. He masturbates, couch. Does it more than once, he should move out. Like,
if you've ever masturbated, you have to sleep on the couch. If you've masturbated more than once, you have to move out.
Right.
And these women are doing it. They're forcing their husbands out.
Yeah.
What?
Interesting. So Jodi would exploit this, and she's breaking up marriages based on little things, and she's feeding the women this nonsense. And I'm like, is she a little gay? Like, she just wants the men out of the picture, and then she only works with the women. It's like but also on top of that, she's trying to ruin their lives.
Yes.
Like, she's telling people that they're child rapists, and I'm like, based on what?
So what she would do is she would take the husbands and the wives, do group sessions with them separately, then come from the men's group and go into the women's group and be like, your husband Adam just told me that he's a pedophile and a child rapist.
And then she'd ruin the relationship between the man and the woman, and then she would report it to the state.
Right. So she's taking like information, but this is the thing. Adam is here. He's like, I'm not addicted to porn. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not a child rapist. But he went to school at Brigham Young. She calls Brigham Young, reports him as a pedophile.
Right.
He gets kicked out of school.
So she's sharing fake personal information also with the church, which in the Mormon community is major. If you get kicked out of the church, like, it's over.
Yeah, you're never coming back.
So like she would call anywhere the fuck she wanted, and people are getting kicked out.
Right.
And so like even though she eventually, because everyone's like, I didn't do anything.
Right.
She gets reported to the state.
So Adam, the one that she called a child pedophile and got kicked out of his college.
Ruined his entire life and his career and everything.
He calls the state of Utah, reports her for acting unethically.
In 2012, Utah's Division of Professional Licensing, or DOPL, put Jody's counseling license on an 18-month probation, finding she'd been sharing confidential information about Adam with the Mormon Church and Brigham Young University.
Her license is put on an 18-month probation.
And that's when she starts connections with an ex.
Yes.
Because that's her way around it. So Ruby Franke has been sort of outed online. Everyone knows that she's abusive, so she slowly gets herself offline.
Yeah.
This Jody person has also been exposed for being horrible. These two find each other.
Yes.
Connections with an ex is born.
And they find each other because Jody was the marriage counselor for Ruby and Kevin.
Right.
But then Jody convinces Ruby to kick Kevin out of the house. Remember how he hasn't seen his kids in over a year?
Right. So in 2020, Jody is hired by Ruby Franke.
Yeah.
And they start working together right away. And now, so it's like a client-patient relationship. And now they're making videos and starting podcasts and going on trips.
We see them,
together.
we do see them in very snuggly,
They're hooking up.
Okay.
Come on.
I mean,
let's go to this cabin together and your husband can't come. And also he's the worst and he's a rapist and whatever.
Before she breaks them up, Jody moved into the house with the Frankies and started going on all of their date nights. I know.
The proof is in the super gay pudding. Because Kevin's like, Jody was basically a part of our marriage. She was going on anniversary dates. And I'm like, they're totally having sex. Jody and Ruby. Or they want to and they feel that they can't. But they want to hump each other big time. And you can't, I don't understand, right?
How do they want to hump each other?
Big time.
Big time. Okay, great.
And I think there's a lot of self-hatred here. I think there's a lot of layers.
Well, because Jody is very sick. Jody is an absolute masochist.
They're all sick.
Yeah. I mean, but Jody is the driving factor. But I mean, Ruby signed off on all of it and participated in all of it. But Jody is the one with all of the really sick ideas of how to abuse the kids. It's really fucked.
So here we get the answer to what's going on with all the houses. Here's what happened.
Kevin Franke has left. He has moved out. She leaves her 2 teen girls back in the Springville home, and she essentially moves in with the family therapist, taking her 2 youngest children with her in Ivins, Utah.
She leaves the 2 teenagers at the empty house 3.5 hours away, the one their father just moved out of.
Yes. Why? I just don't understand. Why would she leave the teenagers?
I think because she can't control them as much.
Yep. They probably think for themselves.
I think they're probably in touch with Sherry. But at the same time, she's still, don't get it twisted, she's still neglecting them.
Yes.
She's still abusing them in some way by forcing them to fend for themselves. I don't know where they're getting money to eat.
Right.
I don't know, how far away school is. Can they get to where they need to go? Can they drive? I don't know what's going on.
They're living at the rec center, basically.
I mean, because Sherry, the neighbors would call Sherry the 20-year-old and say, it's been 5 days. And so I think Ruby would maybe every week, every little bit, drive the 3.5 hours to check in on our kids or whatever to make sure no one is getting a warrant.
This is where we also learned that where Jody lives, she lives in an area called Hellhole Canyon.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's not because you're gay, Jody. It's because you're an evil person.
Totally.
It's okay to be gay.
But this is where we get real detail on how bad the abuse really got. So R, the 12-year-old boy that we saw at the beginning of this on the Ring cameras, he would be forced to stand in the sun for hours at a time. He had to sleep outside. He was deprived of food and water. He would be forced to carry boxes up and down the stairs inside the house all day long.
And R and E would have to go to the cemetery with no shoes on and pick the weeds in the cemetery in the sweltering Utah heat.
We're told that it would get to be 110 degrees. The ground would be hotter than the air.
Yeah.
Their feet and arms had blisters all over them.
And then she'd make them sleep there. So you know how cold it gets in the desert at night? So they'd be sweltering hot all day long and doing all this labor. A bystander is took a video of them picking weeds in the cemetery, and it is so sad and scary. It's so unsettling and horrifying.
And then E, the little girl, she eventually opens up to the cops.
And at one point she described how that she was forced to steal water. Ruby and Jody would watch her in the shower. When she brushed her teeth, they would turn off the water because that's when she would steal water.
Ruby and Jody would watch E in the shower and then turn off the faucet when she would brush her teeth because that's when she would, quote, steal water.
So
steal water.
They're actively preventing her
from drinking
water. On his birthday, they made R stand outside in the baking heat and he got sunstroke.
And this is where they show us really disturbing photos of the actual open wounds.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
I mean,
honestly.
not since like hot coffee. Remember that?
It's really, and it's like the saran wrap. It's really, really awful.
Yeah.
And the kids are now like telling the cops about the different types of handcuffs that were used.
Yeah.
And the cops are then finding them in the house. So the point of going through all of this in such detail is that the stories are getting corroborated.
Yes.
So the stuff that they're just building their case against these women, and the kids are being amazing.
Now, to really corroborate the story against the women, we meet Jessie Hildebrandt, and Jessie's pronouns are they, them.
Mm-hmm.
So Jessie is 30 years old. They are a tattoo artist in Seattle. Jody is Jessie's aunt. It's Jessie's dad's sister.
Yeah. There's no getting around it. Jessie's very cool.
I mean, Jessie is very
Jessie
cool.
lives in Seattle.
Yeah.
They're a tattoo artist. They're a musician.
Like the hair alone.
Like, Jessie's just very cool. Like,
yes.
They just are. There's
and has
no way
survived some really serious shit.
And is also here to tell their story, which is incredibly hard to do because, like, the point is, like, this is so egregious, all this abuse. Like, people had to have seen this or experienced it. Like, where did Jody come from? And that's why Jessie's here, because Jessie did live through this.
And so Jessie's whole story is that they grew up in a traditional Mormon household. The dad was the provider. The mother was the homemaker. And, like, the growing up was fine. Like, they say they really believed in the church, but also were very curious and wasn't afraid to ask questions, which was fine until it wasn't.
Right, because Jessie says, like, I got really angsty and angry, and we've talked about this a lot. Mormon culture is all about keep sweet, never rocking the boat.
Yeah, especially for little girls, which is what Jessie identified as a kid.
Right, and they say, like, Jody is powerful and terrifying, and Jessie wants to do things that teenagers want to do.
Right, of course.
And they say, you know, at the time, I wanted to wear makeup and drink caffeine, and, like, they couldn't do any of those things.
And just be, like, slightly rebellious. So they tell this story about going to the grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary party.
And Jessie's 15 years old at the time.
And Jessie's 15, and they get into a fight with their mom over normal kid stuff, they say. Like,
typical teenager stuff.
You know, mom wanted them to wash the dishes. They didn't want to. Mom takes the phone away. Jessie, like, and the mom have a fight. Jessie goes downstairs and, like, they're at, by the way, Jody's house.
Right. And remember, Jessie is saying, like, I was super angsty and angry anyway. Yeah. So it didn't take much for this teenage fight to become something much bigger.
Right.
Like, this was brewing for a while.
Yes. And so Jessie goes downstairs into Aunt Jody's basement and, like, falls asleep on the couch.
And I woke up to a knock on the door. It was Jody and my grandma and grandpa, and to tell me that my family had left and that I wasn't going with them, and that my life as I knew it was about to change.
Your family left, and your life as you know it is about to completely change.
Their family left them.
Yes.
I can't believe that. And
I
now,
know.
like, Jody's in charge now.
Right.
And Jessie explains they were stripped of all identity. Their hair was cut off, no more makeup. They had to wear approved clothes. They couldn't go to school. They were homeschooled, so no socialization. Like, everything that Jessie was craving in this world was completely taken away from them.
But then, like, just the humiliation of it all. Like, Jody would make Jessie kneel on the floor and beg for forgiveness.
Forgiveness for what?
Exactly. They'd be locked in a room where they had to write down all of their sins in a journal.
Right. And then on top of this, Jody would, like, shame you if you question her.
Yes.
And she would make these crazy assumptions about you and try to gaslight you into believing them. For example, Jessie was accused of having abortions. Jessie was a sex addict. Jessie was masturbating with tampons.
Yeah.
Jessie wasn't allowed to be alone in the restroom.
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. Like, this is all abuse.
And, like, at one point, 2020 says that they spoke to a family member who saw Jessie at one point with duct tape on their mouth. To which I said, where the fuck is this family member?
Right.
Please tell me this family member is also in prison.
Because, as Jessie explains, they weren't allowed to speak to anyone but Jody.
Right.
So when they were, like, around someone else, and it's also, like, a scarlet letter type thing. It's humiliating.
Remember this with E. Remember, like, the cops show up and they find E in the closet and they're talking to E and E won't talk back. Jessie says,
the duct tape was, in her words, an external reminder to me that I'm a liar. And her favorite phrase, which even saying this is just, it hurts, is a masterful manipulator. So even if I wasn't duct taped, if I was at a church function and someone came up and spoke to me directly, I had to just stare at them.
I'm not allowed to respond. I have to just stare at them blankly.
Yeah.
And remember, like, Ruby Franke in the police station when she's, like, getting her interrogation after the kids have been found and the officer is talking to her and she's just staring off. Like, she's a monster, Ruby Franke, but she was also, I think, brainwashed by Jody, too.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse was constantly reminded that they were a liar or told they were a liar. Not reminder because Jesse was not a liar.
Yeah.
But Jody would say things like, you're a masterful manipulator. And
Yeah.
Jesse's like, I will never forget that phrase. That's something she said all the time.
Yeah.
And so Jesse also had to sleep outside.
In
and
the snow.
And Jesse says it's all about power. It's all about control.
Jesse is saying they started fantasizing about jumping off the balcony, breaking their legs, stabbing themselves, anything they could do that would give them a way to escape. Anything.
So in 2010, Jesse goes to police and they make a report about the abuse. Now, Jesse wants to be moved to a safe house because anything to get away from Jody.
Yeah. Now, I want to slow down on this for just a second because they do that. They move Jesse to a safe house. They end up moving into a homeless shelter and sort of like begin rebuilding their life. It's unclear how seriously the cops took the reports of the abuse because Jody is not questioned. She's not stopped.
Yeah.
And this is a moment where if anybody had listened to Jesse and taken them seriously, we wouldn't be where we are now. We wouldn't be doing this episode.
Yeah. Because then we get the story about how Jesse lived with Jody for about a year.
Yeah.
And Jesse would go to work with Jody during
Yeah.
the week and sit in a basement for 12 hours a day. But Kathy, a former colleague of Jody's, was like,
one day I just walked in there and this teenage girl was sitting there and just said to Jody, gosh, what is that teenager doing in there? I think this is the third day.
For hours on end.
Yeah. And Jody got very, I would say, agitated and said, don't talk to her. All I thought was, that's odd.
just leave them down there. It's fine. And Kathy's like, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, Kath.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it, girl?
Yeah. Ask a question, Kath.
So Kathy, I think because Jody was like a tyrant.
Yes.
Kathy doesn't like say anything, but she puts a jacket downstairs in the basement for Jesse because Kathy's like, it was cold. I want to help them out.
Yeah.
It's just a little gesture. And for whatever, like this inspires Jesse.
It snaps Jesse out of it.
And Jesse grabs the jacket. They're like, it's now or never. I got to go.
Yeah. And they make a break for it. They run out into like the middle of the afternoon or whatever. And that's when Jesse finds a homeless shelter. And like, that's where they go and they live and they start to rebuild their life. But the reports of the abuse, we don't know whatever came of that because no one ever goes and questions Jody. She gets in no trouble for this.
Right. But then Jesse hears about the Ruby and Jody arrest.
Yes, like 15 years later.
Right. And so Jesse calls investigators in Utah and like Jesse has a story to tell and it can the story can really help the case because what happened to Jesse is happening to these kids now.
Like exactly what happened.
And it shows a pattern of behavior. And like if only people listen to Jesse. Do you believe her now, everybody?
Exactly.
Do you believe the 20-year-old daughter now? Do you believe these people now?
Yeah.
So we learned something. I didn't know this about Mormons.
Oh, yeah, me either.
They love journaling.
They do.
That's what we're told on this documentary.
Well, they say like from the beginning of Mormonism, Mormons were encouraged to keep journals because documenting your life is considered a devotion to God.
It's like a big part of the practice.
Yeah.
And Ruby Franke did this, but it's really sinister. And it's not a normal journal. And I'm saying this like not really as a joke. Like she didn't even talk about her feelings all that much.
No.
It really is just a documentation of the abuse.
And they found this journal when they raided the house.
Yeah.
And so like it's really like we see some of the entries in the journal. For example,
at the start of the journal, it's R's 12th birthday. She writes, I told R that he emulates a snake. He slithers and sneaks around. If he wants to emulate the savior, he needs to be 100% obedient with exactness.
He needs to be obedient with exactness.
Holy shit.
Then on July 11th, 2021, R was told to stand in the sun with a sun hat. He is defiant. I came back with a cactus poker. When I poke his back to get in the sun, R doesn't even flinch.
Do you know how much pain they had to go through?
Yeah, that's what we're being told that their pain tolerance was so high.
They're numb.
Right, exactly.
They're disassociating from everything. They're just not even, because first of all, they were told, like Jesse was, you don't react.
Yeah.
I can abuse you because this is better for God and you and whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
But like their pain tolerance also, they're just not even like, they completely disconnect from it as a survival tactic. They go into survival mode.
We see another entry. E refuses to work, screams, had to shave his hair off. That's another, like they're taking away the personhood from the kids.
Right. And like the words Ruby is using in her own journal to describe her children.
Her children.
Demon, devil, possessed, they must repent. That like Ruby and Jody have convinced the kids that they're evil and that the kids need to undergo these severe acts of punishment, which means that to them, everything is justified.
Also, the cops are telling us, like, just from reading the journals, you can see that Ruby believes that not just that her kids had been possessed by evil spirits, but that they were celebrating having the evil inside of them.
And she would write about how the kids were crying about the abuse and how it's pitiful. How fucking dare you? These are your children.
But this is the sickness. And like what we don't know is like, did Jody brainwash Ruby? Was Ruby always like this? Like, this has certainly escalated beyond threatening to cut the head off a stuffed animal. This is actually torturing your children because you believe that the children have evil in them and that they're celebrating being evil. How do you get there?
I think it was always kind of there if you are totally fine and think it's like, I don't know, okay to go online and tell the world that you told your kid's school not to feed her. I think it's in there somewhere. And I think like most people like Jody, they search out the weak ones or they search out the people who will like bow down to them and obey.
That's by definition what children are. You know what I mean?
So I think Jody saw that and like Ruby already had the spark. She's not like Stephanie who was like, my husband's not a rapist. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Ruby was like, I think they found something in each other, Jody and Ruby, where this was all allowed.
Yeah.
And then they just become this echo chamber of hate and abuse. And I think they were, again, like we talk about, like, how do these people get in the same room?
Yeah.
How do they even find each other when they're both so evil and awful? But like they did. And I think that's why we're here. I think they both had it in them from the beginning.
Well, and it's important to note that Jody is implicated throughout Ruby's journal, that they're both equally involved in the corporal punishment and the abuse. So like, and they're saying like, what's so great about this journal is that like when it comes to prosecuting this case, the entire case of abuse is laid out for us in their own writing.
Right. They say it's clear intent because like the kids' experience, Jesse's experience, the journal, her vlog, like all of these people, and they were calling her like Gojo, as in Grandma Jody. Gojo. She helped me cut more hair off E's head. We doused her with water in the dog wash. And I just don't understand. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm like, you are calling them evil?
Right.
You're the one cutting her hair off and humiliating her and making her stand in the sun in bare feet and getting sunstroke. But like, how, like, who is the evil one here?
Like, and also isolating them in this enormous, like not letting the kids see each other for a month at a time.
Like, I just, it's so horrible. And so like, to me, they're like equal parts in this.
Yes.
Yeah. We hear the story about how R left a note in these rocks and one of the times he was forced to be outside. And he wrote, like, he took all the rocks from outside. Because again, it's like a major compound, like all of this stuff. And he wrote in rocks
a statement saying, jail, I will call when I get there. They told these kids that you have to repent first, and then you're going to jail. And so that's why he said, I'd much rather just go to jail now.
First you repent, then you go to jail.
And I'm like, what the fuck? This is not, what are you talking about?
He's just saying, like, I just want to go to jail. This is so awful now. I'd rather just go to jail.
turn myself in.
So I honestly think when he went to find that man and said, take me to the police station, it wasn't to report him to.
Exactly.
It was so that he could be taken to jail to end the suffering. It wasn't to turn in his mother.
He didn't know what he was doing.
Exactly.
So, but Ruby and Jody are now in a panic because if cops get eyes on R, they might actually do something to stop the abuse.
Yeah.
And they finally find him this time.
Yeah.
After 15 minutes. And that's when they started using the handcuffs. So they weren't worried for his safety. They just didn't want to get caught.
Right.
And now because he got out a little bit and that's a little dangerous, we have to graduate to handcuffs so then he can never get out.
They're handcuffing him to weights in the living room.
But he did fucking get out.
Yes, right.
You pieces of shit.
Yeah.
But also in the journal, this scared me so much because in the journal, Ruby writes about moving her kids out of Utah to a larger ranch-style property in Arizona. She's like, we need to get these kids into open land. She says, we will drop them like a hot potato in the desert, their new home. And I'm like, she's going to kill them.
Like, she's just going to take them out to the desert to just leave them? Is that what she's saying?
Like, either way, this is ominous.
Yes.
And to me, that's like, she's going to kill them.
Well, I mean, and all the cops are saying.
We have zero reason to believe that this abuse would have stopped short of death. Like, zero.
That's definitely where this was going.
Right.
These kids were going to be killed.
So we're back in purgatory, as in jail.
Yeah.
These two are held without bail, and they're both facing 6 charges of aggravated child abuse. And, like, all these calls from Jody running her mouth, like, what has this world come to? You can't even discipline your own kids anymore. And I'm like, that's not what this is. This is not God's will. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
This is, like, what are you? You know, R put the shackles on himself, honestly. Like, the kids abuse themselves. So what are you saying to me?
And like the prosecutor is just saying, like, listening to these phone calls is so psychotic because you're hearing her justify the abuse to herself, but also trying to convince others that she was doing the right thing.
Right. And at
like
first,
she believes she always has from the beginning when she was vlogging.
Yeah.
She always believed that children were there to discipline and abuse.
And at first, Kevin, the husband, is like, totally.
Yeah.
She would never do this. You have it all wrong. My kids abuse themselves. 2 weeks later, his story changes.
Yeah.
And he explains.
Thank the Lord.
I know. But like, I'm not going to give him too many flowers here.
I know.
He explains what it's like to be with her because he does. I mean, I think he was also abused by them.
Yes.
I'm just saying, like, check in on your kids. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care who tells me I can't see my kids for a year.
No.
Like, you just go fucking get your kids.
You're the adult, but it's very clear that what he's saying is that, like, he was kept in isolation for a month all by himself, told that he was evil by Jody.
Yes.
He believed it. Then she forces him out of the house.
That's all valid. I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not taking that away. That abuse is real for sure.
But now Kevin is no longer a person of interest.
He's now reconciling with his two oldest and once estranged children, Sherry and Chad. And he's fighting to regain custody of his youngest 4. Kevin also files for divorce from Ruby.
And he filed for divorce from Ruby. So he has moved on, thank God.
You know who else had a change of heart, interestingly enough?
Ruby
Franke.
Yeah.
Because in December 2023, suddenly, this is all Jody's fault. She's like, honestly, thank God you guys are here. This is the best intervention.
I know.
Like, I really needed it.
I know.
And I just, like, I mean, she finally admits that what she did was awful.
Yes.
She agrees to testify against Jody.
And it's like, I'm not giving her any room here.
I'm like, I feel like she wants a medal for this. She's
I know.
not getting a medal for this.
No, and I mean, it does feel like Jody brainwashed everybody, but like, you're still responsible for your actions. I'm sorry, these are your children. You're chaining them to weights in the living room.
Like, give me a break.
Yes.
I just don't. And you, so many choices were made here.
Yeah.
To abuse them. And so many calls were made to police that were ignored. So, like, everyone's failing here.
Everyone's failing.
Except for the people making the calls.
I mean, ultimately, both women have to plead to 4 counts of child abuse. They have to agree to serve prison time for each count and that these jail sentences would run consecutively, not concurrently. And also, Ruby's plea deal includes that the prosecution is not going to go to the parole board arguing that she should stay in prison longer. So they're saying Ruby gets that little extra because she was willing to testify against Jody.
Yeah.
But like, ultimately, they can both be sentenced to 4 to 30 years.
Yeah. So it's February 2024 at sentencing, and Ruby is whining and crying, talking about how the kids are her little ducks and she's waddling to safety. And I'm like, how dare you leave the cute ducks out of this? You don't deserve them.
I know.
And who is going to believe you?
I know.
Are you kidding me?
It's just like the Turpin parents sobbing when they were being sentenced.
Like, and Jody's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I wish everyone a beautiful life.
Yes.
I don't wish anything but misery for you. You fucking horrible people.
And we're back with Jessie, the niece of Jody, and they're saying, like, I go to every parole hearing. This is insane.
I believe that she is a very dangerous person, that she cannot be trusted with anyone, children and adults alike. I think Jody is exactly where she needs to be.
They need to be in prison as long as fucking possible. No one is safe if Jody ever gets out.
And the judge doesn't like Jody's tone.
Yeah.
Because she's taking zero responsibility, and the judge is like, well, this is largely, of course, your making.
Yeah.
Adults protect children. You terrorize them.
Yes.
So both women were sentenced to 4 1 to 15 year sentences, and they're going to serve them consecutively.
Yeah, and do we have any sense on when they're getting out?
No. I mean, this ends with Jessie singing this, like, really beautiful original song.
Yeah.
And I think it's really beautiful because Jody stripped Jessie of all of their identity and all of their curiosity, and now Jessie's gained it back tenfold. So I think they're kind of like, this is what happens when you listen to people who are talking about the abuse.
I mean, I just want to know that the kids are okay. I mean, one of the things we did learn was that the dad, Kevin, was suing to stop the sale of Jody's house because he wants restitution to pay for the kids' ongoing psychological care, which they desperately need. These kids were tortured.
Yeah. So we hear that E and R are doing great. They're doing very well on their journey. They're together in foster care. There are all these privacy policies, so we don't know anything about the teenagers in the system.
Yeah.
But Kevin is, like, actively working for custody of his children, and I hope these women run
it ends with them saying that they could be eligible for parole as early as 2027.
Yeah, well, I just would want to talk to them real quick.
Yeah.
Come out.
Just a couple of minutes alone in a closet.
It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
I just might know a guy who knows a guy
I mean,
who's a good communicator who just might want to have a word. And I think that's valid.
I think that's fine.
Everyone's allowed to express
Communicate,
themselves and
yeah.
communicate. And if I want a word, I think I deserve a word.
Amazing.
Okay, great.
Oh, girl, we did it. What's it called?
It's the abuse that Ruby, Frankie, and that asshole Jody did together. I'm not saying Momfluencer. Oh, guess what I did?
Yeah.
You got me, 2020.
Fam, the trailer for my new podcast dropped yesterday. It's called Golden Girls Deep Dive Podcast. Please go find it, subscribe, listen to the trailer. The first 2 episodes come out on Monday. What are we doing next, girl?
We are doing a highly requested What Jennifer Did on
Netflix. I remember when this dropped. Like, the day it dropped, everybody was talking about this.
Yeah, and we've had so many things to get through. So, I'm sorry, this was on the calendar immediately.
Totally.
So we just had other things that you, dear listeners, and our good friends wanted us to do. But What Jennifer Did on Netflix, it is
I haven't
wild.
seen it yet. Is it crazy?
It's, there's a lot to it, and I did a lot of side googling, so there's like a lot going on there.
All right, fam, stay tuned for the trailer for that and our funny and hilarious outtakes.
I hope. We love you. Oh, God.
We love you.
We love you.
Bye.
911, Drew.
Help me, please. I need help.
Calm down. What's going on?
Someone broke in and I heard shots. I don't know what's happening. I'm tied upstairs. Dad?
Hello?
I'm okay. I'm alive.
A woman is dead and her husband injured after a home invasion in Markham.
There was a knock at the door, then 3 gunmen burst inside.
They dragged me down the stairs, and then I heard 2 pops.
We don't get a lot of homicides in Markham, so it's like a grenade going off.
Investigators are not ruling out any scenario, including the possibility the men broke into the wrong home.
We're only going to have one witness, and that is the daughter, Jennifer Pan.
Why would you leave a surviving witness? It doesn't make sense. Something's not right about this. Now, I want to know everything about her.
That is some Alias shit, by the way. They do that on Alias. Yeah.
And before or after the time travel? During?
It's before the time travel.
Oh, okay.
And also before we learn that Frankie does not like coffee ice cream.
Oh my gosh.
She doesn't like it.
Okay.
It's big news.
Okay, great.
Yeah.